Let's talk ostinatos. Let's talk. We kind of be straightforward with some of that stuff, and let's talk about the pattern and then something that's shifting the permutation in a non even number typical format, right? So yesterday we talked about, if you didn't catch yesterday, that's totally cool. Um, I will throw some stuff in on this. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at You're gonna use all of your limbs for this. That's the goal here. We're gonna develop somewhat of an independence. Now we're gonna look at a basic format, and then the bass drum is gonna kind of shift throughout. So it's independence in a sense of one limb. It is going to kind of capture a polyrhythm feel. We're going to play with our hands and our left foot. We're going to play in four, and then our right foot is actually going to play in three. So let's kind of dive in and talk about this. So in ostinato, sorry, I got allergies going, so I'm sniffling. So allergies are killing me. Ostinato is essentially a reoccurring pattern. That's it. I mean, it's a fancy word, but that's the basis of what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to play on the ride cymbal. We're going to kind of jazz this up. So this is kind of a little intermediate. When you see this or when you hear this, I'm going to play one E and, two E and, three E and, four E and. And you can switch that and play straight eighth notes, but just to kind of show you. And you can swap that with. What's real cool is our left foot is going to keep time on this, and this is kind of where we're going to use all of our limbs. So this is a great exercise, and I'll kind of show you a basic way to do this and then vamp this up. This is a great exercise if you are somebody who does not really have a lot of strong, it's not even so much independence with your left foot, but just the feeling to use it, because the left foot's going to play straight quarter notes. So the left foot is going to line up with our right hand, and this is why we're not playing this in the hi-hat, so we can kind of function. If you got an X hat, this is great for playing this on an X hat or playing on your main hi hat if you've got another remote pedal. But this is all left foot and right hand right now. So this is pretty straightforward. 1 E N, 2 E N, 3 E N, 4 E N, 1 E N, 2 E N, 3 E N, 4 E N. And this is in 4. So we're going to go super basic. And we're going to add that snare drum on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And we slow it down. 1 E N, 2 E N, 3 E N, 4 E N. Might run out of breath like me. Now here's where things get a little hairy, right? Now that's a good basis to start. And if your left foot is like really, not powerful in the feeling of locking in it, you can then go straight 4 on the floor and kind of line these up. And do the same thing I was just doing. You can go straight 8 notes. The reason I go further than 8 notes, because I, kind of push this. You can do various patterns. But that's neither here nor there. Let's just kind of go back to the basis. What's going to happen is, and you're going to recognize some patterns within this, your right foot is going to play the first of every 3 16 notes. So to count that, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and Now we're ending on It doesn't leave another 2 empty 16th notes. So we're actually we're going to count either over the bar. You can view this as a 4/4 measure with a 2/4 measure. For those who don't know what that means, that just means 4 beats in a measure and then 2 beats in a measure. You could view this as further over the bar, a measure of 4/4. The next measure of 4/4, half of it is in 2/4. Oh, sorry, half of it's beat 1 and beat 2 to resolve what we're doing right here. And then you start beats 3 and 4, and then that carries over to the next 4/4 measure. Simply, we're doing counts of 6, and there's different ways you can do it. 4 plus 2, right? We can do 3 plus 3. You could do 4 plus 2 plus the second part of 2 for a measure plus 4, right? A lot of ways we can do this. It's just basic math. So, but what's going to happen is this is going to kind of match up. So what you have to think about is these are all playing in groups of 4. This is playing groups of 3. This is why 4 times 3 is 12. We're looking at that in that variation of counting. Okay, but anyway, let's look at what happens with the bass drum and the hi-hat, with your feet. This little dance, if you will. They're going to play a pattern that kind of works against each other but resolves in, and this is why we end up going 6 beats. They resolve in 3 beats. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and right. So there you go. It's playing every 4/16. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and then your bass drum is playing every 3. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and So this resolves in 3, but because we're playing something that resolves in 4, that's why you can do 2 measures of 3/4, a measure of 4/4 and 2/4, or just a measure of 6/4. If I go really fast, by the way, for this, right, I'm just kind of getting this out there. You can absolutely hit me up, direct message. We can set up a lesson if you want to kind of dive into something like this. And then, of course, the information is on there. You know, Dave Bloom does accept tips. Venmo, Dave Bloom Drums. PayPal, 4downproductions@gmail.com. Or you could just send cash to my house. I like that too. So anyway, so here's the pattern. It's 3. This will help you see how many measures. Sorry, how many beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The reason I'm counting to 6, because that will help everything resolve here. Because the snare drum plays every 2 beats, so I can't stop at 3, right? Well, I could, but and I'll kind of resolve it to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I joke around, but I'm serious all the time. I talk about I need my Britney Spears microphone so I don't have to keep leaning over because it's weird playing and leaning. What's up, Adam? And then obviously we do that and we add in this this pattern. And today we're gonna do. So what's cool about that too, and I'll put the notation up after we're all done with this. I can share it. I don't know why it's not letting me do it right now with my phone, but I want you guys to kind of get something like this because you start to work over the bar. You start to play some independence because your feet are kind of dancing their little independent dance. Then you start to layer a different type of pattern over top of it, and then it all comes together. What's cool about this too, and I dig, is when you play that. So we're playing, and again, all these counting, right? 1 E and 2 E, and this stays constant, the same thing the whole time. And then you could play the bass drum pattern with that, right? Every 3 notes. This is where you start to see us. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and then we wrap it up again because the bass drum will come back to the downbeat. Okay. So doing that and kind of having what's going here, and then your left hand is just kind of gracefully doing the every other beat on the snare like a basic backbeat. You start to open yourself up to possibilities of what your left hand can do. And the idea is that you get comfortable with this basic point and you get comfortable with a pattern, and now it's kind of mindless, and that's the feel, and then your left hand can kind of go off and do stuff beyond that. Oh, here's what's really cool too. Because I just chose this 3-note pattern, you could do this with 8 notes too, or whatever. Instead of just doing this, 1 E and 2 E and, you can kind of play the ride cymbal on that, or reverse it, or whatever you want. You can make it dynamically different. So just to kind of have fun with that. There you go. Realize I didn't play the snare over the bar. And now to talk about your it now suddenly gives me the option to bring people on camera. Can I do this? Is it going to work? Who wants to get picked on? I got Mike watching, I got Vinny watching, Shane, and Travis Brown. I don't know why it said I can bring you on. I don't know how that's going to be possible. When do you guys want to get on here? Just have fun. We'll see if this works. Anyway, watch the left hand. that's where you really start to create some independence with what your left hand is doing. Everything really is building one level, one level, one level. So first you got this, and you can choose to do more on the ride, but it's important to have that foundation. And then it's being in 4, your bass drum comes in on the 3. And then from there, you take off. You can change one of the other elements. You can keep doing 8th notes. You can switch what you do here on the left foot. Your ride can do something different. You can play one and whatever, right? You can do all 16. You can dynamically. There's just right. The world is your oyster. You could dive into a lot of stuff. I really dig this idea. And then the next thing after that is playing your bass drum every 5. And something that I talk about, and I'm not going to dive in deep because you got to pay for these thoughts. You need to go back to basics, though, to really have this be something that you lock in tight on, to the point where you just sit down at the drum set and play it, kind of like I'm doing right now, because I didn't warm this up. Is you want to make sure that going back to basics and playing every drum beat you play, but really you can go through foundation and go through the whole vocabulary of placement of bass drum notes, with snare drums just being 2 and 4, and then your hi-hats either straight forward or, the 1 EN, 2 EN, or whatever. Is by doing all that, you really kind of lock in this feel. And you can, and I say even do this with single notes, but this we're playing every 3 notes, right? The kick drum, 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, 4 EN, and it just kind of follows that dotted 8th. Then you could do it, every 5, 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, and you get the point. Then you start to create patterns within that. So instead of playing the first of every 5, you can play the first and third of every 5. So you go 1 EN, 2 EN, 3 EN, 4 EN, and so on. So it's important to lock in the basics, the foundation, the stuff that we think we already know, because we do, right? We're pretty solid on it. But to bring it further and actually develop a solid feel. Like, very often we learn grooves and we play them over and over again until they become solid. It's usually something more complex. It's like a famous groove. It's Fool in the Rain. It's the Rosanna groove. It's whatever, right? Whatever crazy thing we're working on during that week or that time period. Go back to the basics, your basic foundational grooves, because you'll notice that this will make everything easier to learn. And I don't care if it's this. Just change up the hi-hat and just keep this. Whatever you do with your right hand. But build that strength and that foundation, because you take that and then you really bridge the gap on what you can do. And then you start applying to these other things where the bass drum's every 3 notes, the bass drum's every 5/16 notes, the bass drum's every 7, whatever. Then you kind of find that home, that comfort, and then it becomes natural. And that's when you start to develop more and more independence. Independence is you mastering a lot of variations and patterns very comfortably. We don't want to use that term loosely, master, but you play them so comfortably that you can just kind of gonna do it, right? Like when you play this, you lock it in, right? Hopefully you have that's your normal feel. Right? You're comfortable with that. So then you can change these variations on the hi-hat, And even dynamic, right? And so on and so forth. So kind of go back to basics with that. I feel like we want to humble ourselves so much that we don't want to do the things that should be, technically easy. Doesn't matter, man. Go back, get the click out, do that, and then just shift variations on the bass drum or on the snare drum, and do it in odd numbers. so you kind of feel out time, because then it gives you a much better awareness of time. Yeah, we'll kind of end on that.